I agree. I think it's an exceptionally well-designed protocol.
Mm.
Part of my decision to go from neutral to bullish on it back in early 2020 was that I view the network effect as having achieved kind of escape velocity, where the probability of permanent, loss to any other attempt really was low. And so I view Bitcoin as the best chance we have in order to have, like people have pointed out. I mean, Henry Ford talked about a currency based on energy 100 years ago. And this is the best shot we have, I think, to come to this viewpoint happening. I think that's a really powerful idea. It's funny, people are worried about Bitcoin in the environment. Literally as someone with electrical engineering background, I want Bitcoin to use more energy because it uses energy in such a useful way that it can actually, improve a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. And so that's one of the reasons I like to focus on it both positively and discuss the risks. So, because I want people to understand them. I want people to see, the difference between Bitcoin and other protocols, what makes Bitcoin unique, and, just people can continue to support this. There's other risks as well, like, if I think you've talked about this, if the El Salvador experiment doesn't go well,
Mm.
even if for reasons unrelated to Bitcoin, that could again slow down adoption. Other countries could get into that maybe less than they would have if it's a wild success. And so there are any number of things that can affect the speed of Bitcoin's adoption. But in most cases, blocks will still be made. All right. So as long as the security model is intact, and so far it's done that for 13 years almost, it'll just keep making new blocks. And it's a lot of the risks around it are how we treat it, right? So if we're emotional or we're leveraged or things like that, that we can get wrecked by these things. Whereas Bitcoin itself is actually really resilient.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end it. It really is. Before we go, just a quick question: how much have you looked at NFTs? Like, have you deep dived on them? I haven't. I can't remember if you have.
So I touched on them in my research, and my overall view is it's certainly an interesting technology, right? Basically, it's the way I've described it is essentially you're getting a signed copy of something. And so I certainly understand collectibles to a degree. I mean, I have Magic cards, for example. When I was a kid, I had Pokemon cards. I mean, you can have a silly like a piece of cardboard can be worth like $100,000, because we kind of agree that there's some sort of rarity to it. And so NFTs are kind of like that, where you have a piece of art. It's kind of, you know that one is almost like quote unquote signed because it's kind of locked onto the blockchain. But of course, the risk there is, there's a flood of new NFTs coming to market until they saturate demand. It's like, oh, you like rocks and punks. Well, here's tulips. Literally, there's tulip ones. You say here's Lambos, here's penguins, here's apes, here's rabbits. Basically, we're gonna exhaust this whole thing, and we're going to get malinvestment. And so one of the theses for people selecting the old ones is say, well, these are 2017 ones, these are the originals, so you can't, they're going to be the ones that hold value. But if you look at their prices relative to, say, Michael Jordan rookie cards, they're higher. And it's like, you have to. It's one of those things where you have to be I'm not like an art critic, so I don't want to say like I think this NFT is worth this. It's just I view the space as like 99% malinvestment, 1% interesting technology. Um, I've seen, the guys at Blockworks just had like a episode out, and they kind of characterize that every cycle kind of has an interesting idea that ends up being all crap, but then it kind of plants the seed for the next
That's
cycle.
right. Mm.
Yeah, so like you had the ICO boom, and then years later you got DeFi, and there's actually something kind of fascinating there, right? So you kind of had the seeds of it planted earlier, and then now you have NFTs, and we have like multi-million dollar rock pictures, and it's like, well, NFTs are kind of an interesting phenomenon. We'll see where people and technology take this. I know the guys that work on Liquid, for example, I think they put a
Yeah, the
movie ticket out.
tickets.
So there
Mm.
is, I think there's interesting kind of long-term ways to play this. There are such things as luxury goods, or people want to display some sort of flex in terms of I have the say the rare penguin, whatever the case may be. Like someone can show, like, I'm not saying I do, I'm saying someone can basically show that they own something. But I view that there's a very high probability of malinvestment in the space. You're also tied to the security of the blockchain. And so, for example, there are crypto punks on the Solana blockchain that look, they're like the same ones in most cases. Like most of that is overlapped. There's like an alien punk, and those are worth way, way, way less than the Ethereum ones. That's because they don't have as much confidence that the blockchain is going to be around for a very long time and it's going to catch on and become the dominant, say, smart contract blockchain. And so let's say you buy an NFT, and let's say Ethereum, for whatever reason, doesn't work out 5 years from now. Uh, the fact that your JPEG is like signed on that blockchain doesn't mean much, right? Because
Mm.
so you're betting both on the underlying blockchain and that NFT on that blockchain will be viewed valuable years from now. So yeah, so I view pretty much the whole space as rather speculative mania at the moment, where people are making money, but it's I don't view it as kind of durable value.
I think that ticket thing's super interesting because any technology which cuts out a middleman and saves people money is super interesting. And if you think with regards to concert tickets or sports tickets, I almost always buy these days off the secondary market. But these websites that resell the tickets always have considerable fees. Now, if I'm going to be buying, say, 2 tickets I'm going to the boxing in Vegas, and say the tickets are $500 each, you can end up spending 150 in fees for each ticket. If you could create some kind of like a decentralized exchange for these tickets, which are NFTs, that's kind of interesting because I can sell my ticket to you. There's no middleman in between that. So that's going to reduce the cost and create a more efficient market for these tickets. So I do find that interesting. I know some people will be listening again, oh, you only like it because it's on Bitcoin. Actually, I don't care with regards to tickets. I wouldn't care if it's on Ethereum because it doesn't matter with Ethereum. The network has some long-term issues. If I could buy a ticket off you now and I'm going in a few weeks, it's kind of like low risk, but I do see that as kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's also an argument where, right now, if an artist creates a painting and then sells it, it's probably not going to sell for a ton. And then let's say years later, they're well known, and then that person sells that painting to someone else for 100 times the cost. That initial artist doesn't get any of that extra bump up in price. Whereas you can, for example, have a programmed NFT where every time that is sold, the artist gets a cut. And so it's one of those theoretical kind of neat ways you could power musicians, you could empower artists of various types, but it comes down to whether or not we're too early or if we're on the wrong blockchain, and if we're doing it for the right reasons of say interesting technology versus speculation. And so it's like one of those things in the dot-com bubble. There was tons of malinvestment, right? There was
Hmm.
pets.com. There was things that had no business being at the valuations they were at. Some of them took 20 years to recover. All right, but there were things like Amazon or Microsoft that eventually did recover and go back to new all-time highs because there was real technology there,
Yeah.
real value there. And so I think with these kind of speculative manias, there's kind of a glimpse of something useful, but that people are distracted and unable to determine what is long-term value, what is money, what is secure. And over time, we right now we always are looking through, say, like a dirty window. We can't see perfectly clearly through it. And then years of in hindsight, through bear markets and kind of time sorting this out, we separate the wheat from the chaff and see
Hmm.
which things actually had value, which things were built on sand rather than granite.